Nothing ever happens is simply the idea that, well, nothing ever happens. That despite everything we hear online, in the media, and on flashing pixels, for a vast majority of us in our daily tangible lives, nothing ever happens. When we step outside, the world isn't on fire, the sun is still shining, and nothing really changes. Now, before someone goes, well, actually, that's wrong because quite a lot of stuff is actually happening. No shit. This isn't trying to say that literally nothing ever happens, as technically there's always something happening in the world. Throughout all human history and into the future, things happen and things will always happen. But now, because everything's connected, we can hear about every single problem all over the world all the time. Issues that have nothing to do with us. And this is a majority of the things we hear about. Trivial, trending, controversial talking points become personal, even though they are completely outside of our control and don't really change much about our own lives. And recently, there's been some things happening in the world, which we'll touch on in a second, but if you actually go outside and touch grass, you're fine. Not only fine, but I would assume most people watching this video are way more than fine. More fine than at any point in the history of everything. But then, why is almost everything we hear about the world so negative? Why are people always acting like the end of the world is right around the corner? Because this shit is not normal. It cannot be good for our minds. So why do we keep running back over and over again to hear about how bad the world is? Logically, this addiction doesn't make any sense. Why would we willingly drown ourselves in this noise? But when you understand how humans are wired, it actually starts to make perfect sense. Here's one thing you can learn and take with you everywhere. Humans love negativity. We respond much stronger to something negative than positive. And that might sound weird and backwards at first. Like, what do you mean humans love negativity? That doesn't make any sense. But it starts to make perfect sense if you rewind time and think about the beginning of humanity. Really quick history lesson. Let's go back, I don't know, 50,000 years. There was no internet, no technology, no lights, no safety, no comfort. Your entire life would have been a fight for survival on a daily basis. And back then, there were two groups of people, the Mr. Positives and the Mr. Negatives. Mr. Positive and Mr. Negative are out hunting for food. They hear a growl in the bushes. They both stop and listen, but it's quiet. Mr. Positive says, hey, it's probably nothing. Let's keep walking. Mr. Negative says, no, there's definitely a 10-foot tiger in those bushes. Let's run. Mr. Positive says, nah, man, come on, look, stop being so negative. Mr. Negative says, okay, well, if you're so positive, go ahead and check it out. Bet, says Mr. Positive. Now fast forward 50,000 years till today. Mr. Negative mindset still lives on because he lived that day. Now, the point of that shitty story is that negativity was actually really useful in the past because it helped us prepare and be cautious and take actions to protect ourselves from the threats that surrounded us. The term, it's better safe than sorry, was a very real thing because things that weren't safe could literally kill you and then your entire bloodline. Being scared, anxious, and cautious might not feel good, but it kept you alive. But today, that is simply not the case for majority of us. Despite what most people think, you would not want to live in any other time period in history than this moment right now. Today we have the longest life expectancy ever, and it continues to grow. We have much better medicine, because not too long ago, that didn't even exist or was terrible. We have instant access to unlimited knowledge, to the point where you can ask any question and get 10 million answers to that question instantly in your pocket, and just a much better quality of life across the board. And despite what the news says, the world is actually safer than ever. There's less wars than ever, less violence than ever. Basically, if you were to go back to almost any point in history and almost any place, you would almost certainly be fucked. But even though we are living in the best time in history thus far objectively, we still have the hardware of Mr. Negative because he's the one who passed down his genes. So the mindset of constantly looking for negativity and things to stress about is still present. But for majority of people, this setting is being hijacked more than it's being helpful. Because even though the world has changed drastically this past eon, our brains haven't caught up. Most people today are living 1,000 times better than their ancestors, yet swear the world is just as bad, if not worse. But why? If the world is the best it's ever been, why are people acting like it's the worst it's ever been? What was the gasoline to the fire that makes it seem like the world is worse than it actually is by putting negative things in front of our eyes at all times? Well, you guessed it, the internet. If you're watching this video, you're using the internet. Welcome. And if you're using the internet, you're connected to everything all the time. This comes with a long list of pros and a long list of cons. But at the very top of this cons list is how much negative bullshit is pushed to the top. Okay, right now you're on your phone or a TV or whatever device, and I assume you have different social media apps that you go on. It doesn't matter if it's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, or whatever. And for those who don't know, every one of these apps or programs are run by multi-billion-dollar corporations that are designed from the ground up to keep you on the platform as long as possible so they can keep showing you more and more specific ads, which increases your chances of buying something. But the main goal is to keep you on the platforms and keep coming back for more. And these people know what they're doing. They know that they want to keep you coming back for more. They need to create some emotional response within you, a trigger. It can be fear, excitement, pain, sadness, whatever, as long as you feel something strong. And you would think if you wanted someone to stay as long as possible, you would give them stuff that they love. But as we talked about, humans are weird and enjoy the opposite. We respond much stronger to negativity than positivity. Like, for example, which one of these grabs your attention more? This just in, 100 million people got up this morning, got into their car, and made it to work safely. Or, this just in, there's been a 13-car pileup claiming the lives of 7 people, including 3 children. You wouldn't care about the first one. Nobody would. People would stop watching because it doesn't hit anybody's emotions, compared to the second one. Automatically, there's probably something in your brain that got triggered from the second sentence and not the first. These companies know this and lean into this heavily. If you get on any platform and start to explore, no matter how much you try to avoid it or ignore it, something negative will pop up. Something political, some news, maybe some drama, etc. Like, even the content that isn't political in nature probably has a little bit of negativity sprinkled in it. Like you know what I mean? Like people screaming, acting like the world is ending. Or those 15, 20-minute videos of people talking about some random drama about some celebrity. Or people debating whether or not there's a man in the sky. Or viral videos of people getting hurt or falling. Or those red pill podcasts when it's just people yelling and screaming and stuff. But especially when you turn on the news or see anything political, it is all bad. It is rarely ever something good. And this is on purpose. They need to keep pushing out more and more negativity to grab your attention. And now because of the internet and technology, it doesn't end. Now it's global. Now it's always in your pocket. Now they bring on people to yell and scream at each other over things that don't affect hardly anyone. Now, an unfortunate story of something happening in a random country is now on the phones of millions of people across the world who couldn't point to the place on a map. Now they have people fighting about shit in comment sections on topics they don't really know much about at all. And I'm not saying them doing this is right or wrong. They are a business and they have to get their check. And to be fair, they're not forcing anyone to do anything. But at this point, the news isn't really news anymore, but just a platform that shows people negative things for entertainment. Real news is supposed to be objective, unbiased, non-stimulating, and tell people actual new things happening in the world that are important to them. But when the goal becomes keeping people hooked as long as possible by spiking their emotions, by inciting fear and outrage, it stops being news and becomes entertainment. Like, go on the TV or your phone or whatever and watch any news channel and just pay attention. There's a bunch of cuts and edits and effects and animations, and you got to ask yourself why they're doing this. They run 24/7 and they have people read on scripts and lines, and they just use a bunch of techniques to increase retention. It's no longer about giving objective news to inform the population, but it's about trying to get someone's emotions juiced up so they can increase their engagement to get more clicks, views, and money. Like, everything is controversial. It's left versus right. It's good versus evil. It's men versus women, this versus that. But when you put the phone down and go outside and exist in the real world, the sun is still shining and nothing ever happens. Now, I keep saying nothing ever happens, but what exactly do I mean by this? Well, how many things throughout our lives have we heard about? There are supposed to be these really huge things, but nothing ever really came of it at all. Or these problems only seem to exist on a screen and were extremely overhyped. But if you put the phone down, it disappears and you forget about it 3 days later. Here's some specific examples, right? Shit like 2012, when everybody thought the world was going to end because of an ancient calendar ending. That one's a little bit goofy, but people were still worried about it. I know I was when I was 11 years old at the time. And obviously, we're still here. Nothing happened. Or Ebola. That was supposed to be like the pancake before the actual pancake. When I was young, I thought it was going to be some huge thing with people getting sick and bodies on the floor and everything. But guess how many people got Ebola in the U.S. since 1976? 11. 11 people. Yet way more than 11 people were worried about it back then, and now nobody really takes it seriously. Or monkeypox, which I think is something people are talking about recently, which I don't really know too much about or really care about at all. But obviously, if you go outside, nothing happened. Or like acid rain, when the rain was supposed to be poisonous and get on the crops and cause the crops to die, which would cause a chain reaction and we're all gonna die. Obviously, we didn't. Or the killer clowns, when people were genuinely afraid of clowns going out and killing people and you had to watch your back all the time. Or the murder hornets, where there was hornets coming from Japan and you had to be on the lookout. Or the net neutrality thing, when people thought the whole internet was gonna be shut down or something, which obviously didn't happen because, I'm here right now. Or like the whole thing with TikTok being banned, which people have been talking about for years now, but clearly hasn't happened. Or like how World War III is going to start and something with North Korea and Russia. And I can just go on and on, but clearly nothing has happened. Or like right now, we hear a lot about AI and how some people are afraid it's going to take over the world and everyone's job. And it's going to be this terrible thing in only 3 to 5 years. And an AM's going to come and enslave us all. And we're going to lose our mouths and try to scream. Yet today, it is still mostly just a buzzword. It's really cool. And it's probably taken some jobs and has potential. But if you're already good at your job, you haven't been replaced. And if you're really good, you still won't be replaced. But right now, AI is just a word companies slap on to features to get more profit share. But hey, game is game. And there's probably, not even probably, I know there's a lot more I haven't even mentioned. So like, let me know below. But with all these things, for most people in our daily lives, nothing happened. And now we're going to start getting a little bit more serious. Even though most of these things are real things that happen and do actually impact the lives of people. For most people, especially in the West, they're just trends and hashtags. Most of these talking points are things that don't impact the lives of the people listening to them. They are things to talk about for a bit until they're forgotten and they're replaced with something else bigger to talk about. But that's all they really are. Just trends to yap about and entertain the people consuming. And I want to get a little bit deeper with these next few that really solidify this for me. And I promise this entire video isn't going to be about this. And remember, everything's just my opinion. And if I'm wrong, then you're right. I'm 100% wrong about everything and you're the correct one. But these are the two major things that really change the way I see the media and online stuff. All right, so one of the big things that comes to mind when I think about trends that are just bigger online than in real life is Black Lives Matter. I remember when I was in school, I was hearing all this stuff about how racist the world is, how these things happen to these black guys, and how it's basically something I need to keep in the front of my mind no matter where I go. Because for those who don't know, I myself am a young 6-foot black man living in America, the prime demographic for evil racist cops. But it's one of those things when in real life, for most people, vast majority of people, nothing ever happens. Yes, I know there are real people who are negatively affected by this. I am not going to argue that. But it's about making it a bigger issue than it actually is for most people. By making it seem like the problem is the biggest problem in the history of problems and everybody needs to hear about it. From turning something extremely rare and it's something you hear about constantly and it's constantly being thrown in our faces because it knows it gets people emotional. I can only speak from my experience, but it really made me realize how social media, traditional media, or whatever can throw gasoline on something that in the grand scheme of things is simply not that deep. Now, personal story for those who care. I've been stopped by the police a few times. And in one experience, I got a ticket because I was going like 14 over, which was, understandable. 2 white guys, nothing crazy. But then once I passed a black cop going 11 over on the interstate and I got pulled over and I got a ticket and bro was really mad at me because of this. He was the only officer I've ever interacted with that was the actual like stereotypical mean, upset cop. But it's been like 2-3 years ago. Don't care anymore. Doesn't matter. And then there's this one time, which I've only told a few people. So another time, it was 8:45 at night and it was dark. And I was driving down the road when I thought nobody was out and I started being stupid. And I was going 80 miles per hour in a 45 mile per hour zone. And then this one spot where I have never seen a cop was there. And he pulled behind me slowly without his lights, and he followed me for a little bit before turning his lights on. He pulled me over. A young 18-year-old black man at night wearing a hoodie, driving 35 miles per hour over the speed limit, which I'm 90% sure is a felony charge. And guess what? He let me off on a warning. And he was a white cop. And remember, this is 2019. At the time, I was actually genuinely scared that something bad was going to happen to me because of everything I was hearing online. But when he let me off, I had to shake his hand and thanked him personally for his kindness. And I drove off wherever I was going with no music, 2 hands on the wheel, just silent all the way there. And there's been a few other interactions, all good. But the media I was being fed at the time created fear in me that didn't need to be there because they knew it would make their pockets heavier. They knew it would get people watching, get people emotional, have them argue and fight, which unfortunately only benefits the ones who are putting out the message. And again, game is game, but I was nothing more than a number added to their bank account. It's just that all this talk about race online is just not representative of reality. I'm not going to say that nothing ever happens anywhere because obviously that's just stupid, but there are genuinely people who still act like it's the civil rights movement still, that we're still back in the 60s. There are people online who genuinely think that race is still the biggest issue and it's something to actively think about daily. Sure, do bad things happen across the world and is it bad? Yes, of course. But to act like it is an issue that everybody should have on the front of their mind is just stupid. I hate talking about this stuff because I really don't care about race at all. Like, I really don't. And it's something I've never really focused on. But online, still, it is something all people can talk about or seem to care about. Still, I remember hearing about race this and race that in high school over 5 years ago, and people are still on about it. And I used to think the same way, that like every day, thousands of people who look like me are getting shot and killed for no reason, and I need to keep my eyes open because they're right around the corner. But once I started researching stuff and I put my phone down, I realized majority of the problems were coming from my phone, not the outside world. I'm chilling, and so are most other people. Yet people talk about it nonstop, and it's just a tiring loop. But the cherry on top is that all of this is a trend, which might sound insensitive, but that's all people who are following this stuff are doing. They're following a trend. Black Lives Matter and all this other stuff are things that nobody really talks about anymore. During the time whenever it was a hot topic, there was a bunch of debates, there was a bunch of coverage on it. It seemed like something bad was happening every other week at some point. There were companies and celebrities pitching in, like everybody was involved. Then once a new trend came, it died. They were only talking about these things because it was put in front of them and it was a cool thing to care about, but not really because they actually cared about it. They're just doing it because the phone told them to. Then once the next trend comes and dies, they'll follow another and another, even though it didn't change anything. Like, what does posting a black box do for literally anyone? Why are you putting BLM in your bio? Why is this suddenly an issue you care so much about? Why are you crying because someone got elected? Speaking of elections, that just happened. This video isn't about whether or not it's good or bad, or if you love him or hate him, but Donald Trump. This dude is probably the prime example of polarization I can ever think of, but it's also one of the biggest examples I could think of in my life that nothing ever happens. When I first started hearing about him in high school, I was told that between him and Hillary, he was the most racist, sexist, bigoted, xenophobic guy ever, and he's basically trying to end the world or whatever. He was the mustache 2.0. And I was talking to my friend about this because, at the time everybody was talking about this. And because I was a Trump hater, I was saying all this stuff about him, that he was this and he was this and that and this, until my friend, who I assumed in hindsight actually liked Trump, asked me why. Why did I think what I was thinking? Why did I believe what I was believing? And I realized I didn't have a good answer, and I was just repeating shit I was hearing from others. It had no foundation. And then I realized I don't really know what I'm talking about. This is all just stupid. I'm getting all emotional and repeating things I was hearing on my phone screen. And worst, I wasn't thinking for myself. I was being programmed. Now, it's not that deep, but I was wasting my time. I couldn't even vote at the time. And since then, I've purposefully tried to avoid politics as much as I can, unless I need to. And after he became president, nothing happened. I'm black. I didn't become a slave again. The world didn't explode. Like, nothing tangible changed about my life, or at least nothing that I noticed. Before, I swore that if he became president, so much shit was going to change, but nothing really did. People stayed on their schedules. The world is still here. And sure, it was a good talking point. People love to talk and debate and give their same regurgitated opinion for the 1,000th time, but at the end, nothing happened. Even when Biden became president, nothing really happened. And now that Trump is president again, people are freaking out all over again. And it's just like, people are acting like these people they see online are spitting in their coffee in the morning. That Trump is coming into their house and slapping their kids. That Biden's putting a rock in their shoe. They act like because they saw a lawsuit or some drama or something being said by someone on a screen, it's going to cause everything to burn and somehow change anything about their life. But nothing ever happens. Like, I don't know if I'm tripping, but day to day, whatever really changes? I wonder if I got like a secret camera that could follow these people around 24/7 who take this stuff so seriously over the past 10 years and just see how their life has changed. Has anything actually happened at all? Are they tangibly doing anything different? Do they live in a different place now? Do they not have food, water, shelter? Because if they're still alive, that means every day they got up, slept, ate, pissed, shit without fail. Yet when they turn on the news, they're screaming that the next day is going to be different. But outside the screen, they still have bills. They still buy shit they don't need. Their schedule hasn't really changed, and they have other shit to worry about. Have they accomplished any of their goals? Have they become any closer to that person they've always wanted to become? I just can't imagine somebody who has their shit together really worrying about all this shit happening in the world 24/7, unless it's their job and they're making money off of it or benefiting from it in some way. Because sure, if it's part of your job or your brand, or maybe you're already really successful and you're just spreading your opinion, sure. If you got $50 million in the bank, say whatever you want. But for 99% of people, what's the point if nothing changes? I remember this quote from Game of Thrones. I can't remember who said it. It was maybe Varys. He said that It's interesting in one part of the world, nations can be waging war, but on the other side, nothing at all. And it made me think about myself and my experience and how it's like, holy shit, that's how life is, at least for me at least, that I can look at my phone and see a bombing happening across the world, yet I'm here in my room eating a pizza, comfortable. And that's the reality for the million other people who like the same post as me. In the real world, nothing really changes. Now, I want to take a second to talk about things that actually did happen recently, because I don't want it to just seem like I'm ignoring real things. In my 23 years of existence, the only two tangible major events that have actually happened is the 2008 crisis and the pancake. Now, in 2008, I was only 7 years old, so I'm not going to speak too much about it. I was there, but not really, so I know it was serious, but I can't say how bad it was. But the pancake was different. I remember this time vividly because I was 19 when it started, so I watched it happen in real time. It was a big deal. The world got shut down, the economy took a hit, people were scared, people got sick, and unfortunately, real people died. I want to be clear and be respectful of the people who were lost, as I know that it's something that can never be repaired. But during that time, even when something huge was happening, I couldn't help but notice that for vast majority of people, life went on, that we kept existing, that for most people, it was more of an inconvenience than anything. People still found a way to eat, sleep, make money, and survive years later till today. And there's a good chance you haven't even thought about the pancake recently until I mentioned it now. And please remember, I do not mean to be insensitive. But while the cough was serious, I can't be the only one who felt like it was pushed a little too hard and made a bit bigger than it actually was. While it was a very serious thing, it started to feel like one of those trends people only talk about and care about because the screen tells them to. And once it gets replaced with something else, they forget all about it. Like people were making it a little too deep. Okay, so here's an example from my actual real experience. I remember at my old job in a grocery store during the pancake, this young customer actually got mad at me and my two coworkers, either because we weren't wearing a mask or because we were really close together or something. Something before nobody would care about at all. But because she was told to, she cared about it so much that she started to get mad and she raised her voice and she talked to a manager. Yet today, I doubt she would do the same thing because it's no longer trending. Or there's one woman who realized that we got a new shipment of disinfectant spray and she tried to take the entire box off the cart. Like 8 or 12 full containers, or just the whole thing with all the toilet paper just being gone off the shelves. Like people really freaking out about this. The largest impact that the pancake had on my tangible life is that it stopped me from going to in-person college classes, and I got pretty sick. You know, like 6, 7, 8 out of 10 bad for 4 days. That's about it. And I'm sure that's a story for majority of people. Maybe got sick, had to stay inside, maybe felt a bit lonely if you didn't try to go out at all, had to wear a hot ass mask, ordered Amazon boxes. That's it. And the weirdest part is how quickly the world moved on from it. Like as soon as something else bigger came, everyone dropped it. You hardly see anybody wearing masks anymore or doing anything to prevent the spread of it. Because it's not like it just up, went and poof and disappeared. It still exists in the world and some people are still catching it, but nobody cares about it because it's not on anybody's screen anymore. But some people years ago were acting like it was the Black Plague, or if you got it, you had 24 hours left. But for 95% of people who got it, unless you were older and had health problems, you were fine. And seriously, I'm not trying to be insensitive and say this didn't happen, but when most people went outside, the main difference they saw in their daily tangible lives was a mask and less people. Was it something to be aware of and fearful of? Maybe a little, yes. But media companies and social media lean into this heavy because it was a big thing to talk about. Now the entire economy shut down. Now people are getting laid off. Now buildings are empty. Now we got to be 6 feet apart. Now we need to print money. Now there's inflation. Now there's this. Now there's that. Even though most people aren't actually going to be affected by much other than a sore throat and a stuffy nose. And I'm really trying hard to talk about this objectively without sounding like a dick. Maybe it's survivorship bias. Maybe I am being close-minded. I don't know. If something serious did happen to you during this time or someone that you know, I apologize. Seriously. But with my own eyes, most people during this historic event and other smaller things, nothing devastating ever happened to them, just small adjustments. It makes me wonder, how will people talk about this time 100 years from now? Will they exaggerate it? Will they make it seem like it was the worst time in history? Like what stories will be told about this time when if you actually got a camera and watched people, most of us were chilling inside and scrolling on our phones. It really makes me think about the past and how the past actually went versus how we're told it went. But that's another video. So that's what I mean by nothing ever happens. Not that literally nothing ever happens, but that vast majority of the things we hear about, especially online, are usually problems that have nothing to do with us, that are irrelevant, and are made bigger than they actually are because of the internet and social media and hysteria. I guess it's really weird living in a time where we can hear about anything and everything happening everywhere that's so bad and so terrible, but when we look down at our hands, we're still here. The days keep coming. And it might sound wrong, but should I care about what's happening across the world if it has nothing to do with me? That might sound like a bad question, but do you care about your friends, mothers, brothers, friends, coworkers' problem? Probably not. Why? Because it has nothing to do with you and you don't even know them. 5,000 years ago, if you lived in China, you wouldn't give a shit about the native people were doing in America because they were so far away and irrelevant to you. You had other shit to worry about. It's not that it's a selfish thing. Like maybe it is, I don't know. But that's how everyone is. It's just a human thing. Unless it's right in front of you, the problem doesn't concern you. You probably don't even care about your neighbor's problem. So why do you care about something happening across the world? It makes me think about how it was throughout all human time. If there was something happening 1,000 miles away, even 5 miles away sometimes, it just didn't matter. But now we can know instantly whether or not something is happening across the street or across the world. It's just too much. The human brain was not made for this. We were not made to get unlimited information all the time. We were designed to live in the real world, not the digital one. For all time, we've only cared about issues within ourselves or within a small circle. Even with serious issues like petty gossip or drama. Before it all used to be local, it was actually important to knowing who to trust and who not to trust. But now it's the whole world's drama. Now it doesn't end. Now it has absolutely nothing to do with us, about people we'll never see with our own eyes. But people worship celebrities and they care about what this person said about this person. It's just like, why? It really blows my mind when people care so much about celebrity drama. Like, why do you care about what's happening about a person that you have never actually seen in front of you before? And if they saw you, they wouldn't even blink at you. But you're there researching every single detail about this person's life. Or like people who care about everything happening across the world and everything happening in different countries, or it's happening in the political office, but they're not doing anything in their own lives. They put more effort into things outside of themselves than on themselves, if that makes any sense. Since the creation of instant information, it has messed up our perception of the world. Like, look at the screen for 4 seconds. Our brains are really smart, but also really stupid. Your little monkey brain cannot tell the difference between real and pixels. If it sees it or hears it, even if it's fake, it's going to create the same emotional response as if it's real, and it's happening right now. And because we're addicted to negativity, and we're always online, and we're constantly seeing negative things, your brain's going to think it's all real, when in reality, right in front of you, it only exists on moving pixels. What's even more interesting about the internet and what it's been able to do for people is that not only can you see all the bad things happening, but you can also see how uninterrupted people's lives are during the bad times. Even when the economy is bad or there's a war waging, people still scroll. People still eat the same food. People still buy shit they don't need. People still go into malls and maxing out credit cards and just living and just doing everything they've been doing for the past 30 years. Like, we can see a clear divide between what our phones tell us and what our eyes tell us. Like, at least for me, like during the last 3 big elections I've experienced, the next day nothing changed. That when there's rioting and there's people screaming on my phone, in real life, my car still starts and food still tastes the same. We live in a time when we can see a tragedy happening on one swipe, and then the next swipe, a stupid ass meme. It's just sad that I know that there are real, actual, unfortunate things happening across the world. But for the most part, it's just entertainment for those in the West, no matter how much people don't want to admit it. Real people's problems are just trending talking points to have people in comment sections. But in reality, not much changes for those consuming, and not much gets done for those who are actually going through something. Because I don't keep up with politics or anything like that, but it's weird seeing a war zone and then there's a million people commenting, but it's not actually doing anything for anybody tangibly. Like, there's awareness, sure, but all that causes is just fighting in comment sections and debates, and people make more content and more money for it's just nothing ever really gets done for the people who are actually suffering. And like, someone's real life tragedy is just entertainment for someone across the world. It's just weird. And There's nothing wrong with knowing about what's happening around you. It is obviously not good to walk around and be absolutely clueless about everything. But there is a difference between being informed and knowing the cliff notes versus being obsessed. A difference between knowing a general idea about the state of the world versus having a strong emotional response to something that doesn't concern you, or it's just the opinion of another biased human on a screen. Because if you do that, there's 4 things I can think of off the top of my head that combine into one big thing. For one, it desensitizes you. If you're constantly hearing about this problem and the next, the time when something actually serious does come along, you're not going to take it that seriously, which I think is happening to a lot of people slowly because of the news and media, and even me to a certain extent. 2, it gives you a distorted sense of reality. If you constantly hear that the world is negative, you're going to think that the world is negative. Kind of like if you watch true crime videos all day, you're going to be looking over your shoulder everywhere you go. Or if you think that the world we live in is the most evil, racist time ever, you are going to see that in the world. Because, not getting too scientific, but we have this thing called a cognitive bias, basically meaning that if you focus on something consciously or subconsciously, you are much more likely to notice it. It's kind of like if I said, look for all the yellow cars next time you're driving. You're probably going to see a lot more yellow cars than you usually do. But at the end of that same day, if I asked you how many blue cars that you saw, you probably struggle to remember any, because you find what you're looking for, and everything else becomes blind to you. Which can lead to 3, radicalization. Because we have a negative bias towards things, and because they have to keep people staying, they can't keep just saying the same things over and over again. They have to get more intense, more emotional, more extreme. And the more extreme and the more negative, the better. And because we have our own personal biases, the algorithms are going to show us more and more of what we like, and lead you deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole to feed into your own biases. And now you're stuck in an echo chamber, hearing the same ideas repeated back to you over and over and over again, to the point that now 2 people who think 99% the same, but disagree on a few small details, are yelling and screaming at each other. It's no longer, oh, well, I do agree with you quite a lot, but there's a few little small details we need to iron out before I can fully comply with your idealism. No, you're evil, and you're racist, and you're terrible, and you're the worst person ever walked this planet because of the person you voted for. I just can't believe you're doing this. I'm telling you all. And finally, 4. All of this is a waste of time and energy. These things come together to create a lack of focus on what actually matters, known as a distraction. And not just a distraction, but an addicting distraction attached to us at all time that's constantly getting reinforced and replaced with bigger distractions. And it's not going to hit you until you wake up one day at 36 years old with no real goals, no purpose, a mountain of debt, and days and months and years of wasted time spent on things that never mattered. Until you're just an empty, hollow shell of a human waiting to die, knowing you wasted the one chance you had to exist on meaningless noise. That's why this is such a huge problem, because it is just going to get worse. I assume if you're watching this far, you want to get the most out of your existence, to do things and have experiences before you're gone. I get it. Good. Me too. But the fuel to this life is time and focus. And if you waste the little time you have focused on distractions that take away from the things that actually impact your life, it's wasting your existence. Like I remember years ago when I was at the very beginning of my self-improvement journey, or whatever you want to call it, one of the first things I learned early on was from a book called Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which you've probably heard of. It's one of the more popular books in that niche. And the idea, or at least the one that I got from it, was that people only care about things that aren't important because they don't know what is important in their own lives. And those who sit down and question everything and actually figure out what they find meaningful and important in their own lives and are focused on it don't care about things that don't matter. Things like politics, news, drama, whatever. Things outside of their control and things that have nothing to do with them. It's like people who are online posting themselves crying because Trump won the presidency again. It's probably because they don't have anything meaningful to care about in their own personal lives. So they latch on to something external, which realistically will only marginally affect their life at best. But if they knew what was actually meaningful in their lives, they might not like the outcome, but they're not going to put up their phones and scream into the camera and then post it on social media for the whole world to see. Because here's the thing. You will care about something. You are a human. You will always look for meaning. If you don't choose what's important to you, you'll start caring about whatever gets fed to you, even if it's meaningless. In my opinion, the reason people get upset and emotional over trivial shit like that is because they haven't sat down and had a really good long think about their existence on this blue rock. Because if you actually step back from the screen and go outside and touch grass, nothing's happening to you. Okay, so I'm done talking about how nothing ever happens and how the world on our screens is much different than the real world. But what's the solution? Tangibly. How do we stop getting misled into thinking that everything we see online is the most serious thing ever and worthy of our time, and stop this endless flow of information being downloaded into our brains? Well, honestly, I don't think there's a universal solution. I think this is just going to get worse and worse as it has been for years. Most people don't even know this is an issue at all and cannot and will not stop running back to the screens. And these companies are just going to get better and better at hooking people and wasting their time. And even after this video, a lot of people are just going to ignore everything and still go back to scrolling and swiping. So as a whole, most people are screwed. But those who can focus and fix this on an individual level will control the world. This is how I personally am able to fix this issue within myself, and I hope it's useful to you. So in my opinion, the first step to fix this sounds pretty simple, but it's the foundation to doing anything useful in life. Think. Think for yourself. Probably one of the biggest things I've ever done is sit down and think about my life and actually figure out what I want my life to mean to me, or at least some direction, and then move in that direction. Not that I need a perfect compass, but at least something. And if you sit there long enough and think about your mortality and the fact you don't have forever to be here and do the things you want to do, you stop caring about bullshit distractions really fast. And also, when I say think, I also mean question. Question everything. Question the world. Why this thing exists. Why you're doing what you're doing. For what purpose, if it even has a purpose. Question who benefits from the way things are. Why do certain systems or ideas exist? Why are you following certain rules? Why do you care about certain things? Is it because they actually matter to you, or because you're being told that they should? Question your own actions, your beliefs, what you give your time and energy to, what actually matters to you, and why that. And if you keep asking and going deeper, you realize that most things don't really have a solid foundation. And a lot of it is just things that people made up and repeated enough times to feel real. And if there's no foundation, then you can make up your own. And 9 times out of 10, what's important for that foundation has nothing to do with what we see on a screen. At the end of the day, people just want freedom. To be able to have the ability to do the things they want to do with their lives, live on their own terms, and get to the point when they can provide or create a meaningful existence for themselves and loved ones. And the only changeable way to achieve that is to first be alive and live in a safe environment, which most people do now. And then the second is having enough resources, especially money, that you no longer have to worry about anything else, so you have the time, leverage, and power to create whatever life you want. If you cover those two bases, 99% of people would be chilling. Of course, relationships and other aspects matter, but those come with time. Right now I'm speaking about the foundation. I don't want to simplify this video too much to just lock in and make money, but let's be real. In reality, when we get older, what else is there really to do and worry about? For vast majority of people, at least. I'm mainly talking specifically in America because that's where I live and what I see most people complain about. The main thing I see people talking about right now are the economy and inflation, which is just money. Because sure, if you're in another country that's being ran by literal dictators and your rights are being actively taken away, I 100% get it. That's different. Protest and revolt. But here, most of the complaints that I hear are about things that would disappear if they lock in and make money. And that's a bit of a joke, but it's true. Doesn't it just come down to money and freedom? I don't know if this is very short-sighted or egotistical, but I'm really trying to think about this. Is money not the biggest thing that's going to make a tangible difference in one's life and put them in a position to do something when something does actually happen? And not just money, that's just a byproduct, but more of gaining resources, independence, becoming someone more. Because if you just solve that problem, most political or online issues either become irrelevant or negligible to your daily tangible existence. So shouldn't that be most people's only focus? I know this is really simplified, but if you don't focus on becoming better or creating some form of leverage for yourself or making some money, gaining skills, power, influence, whatever, what do you think is going to happen to you when something inevitably does happen and you have nothing? Another war will come sometime between now and forever. And when that does happen, who do you think will be in a better position? The person complaining and reading every single thread online about the drama going on between countries and within their own, always trying to change the rules and change the system? Or the man who understands the rules in front of him and builds his resources so when the time comes, he can protect himself and his family? Like, which is a better use of your time? And of course, this is easier said than done, but right now, this second, Why should the focus be anywhere else if that's the only thing that's going to make the largest difference in your life? I get it. I know there's a lot of people who don't like the system and the rules of the world, and I 100% understand that. Life is not fair, and there's no right way to make everyone happy and have everyone get everything they want. But I personally don't see a point in always trying to change the rules. Because, like, I was talking to this one person who DM'd me and just other people, and we were talking about capitalism and money, etc., and how the rules are unfair and corrupt, and they only benefit the wealthy, and they always seem to win. And it's interesting because it's like, yeah, they are. So what now? Like, what do you do from there? Do you spend your time trying to change the rules, or do you learn the rules and play the game the best way you can so you can get the benefits yourself? Let's say with politics, the rules change exactly the way you want them to. The whole system changes overnight. Okay, now what? Are you going to be doing anything different tomorrow? Are you free? What about any of this is going to actually change your actions? Why keep focusing on these things that, even if they go your way, would marginally affect your life? Like, what is the point? Because there's just so many people who focus on trying to change the rules of the world. And I get it. Like, for example, I don't want to say, like, never try to change the rules, because obviously, let's say you're in, like, the civil rights movement. Obviously, if it's something crazy like that, okay, try to change the rules. But especially in like America, I see people talking about this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And it's like, I get it. But like, if the rules do change, what would really change about your life? Like, you're still working at the same job. You're still driving the same car. Like, okay, the rules change all of a sudden. What are you doing? Like what? Now you have a, like, okay, like, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. Let's say that inflation drops. The price of milk goes from $2 to $1.50. You're not doing anything different. You're still doing the exact same things. Even if you want the rules to change, unless the rules change is going to actually drastically change your life in a huge, meaningful way, and the rules are actively hindering you down and limiting your growth, okay, cool. Then try to change the rules. But there are still people who are still successful and are still getting ahead, even with the way the rules are now. It is only those who focus on themselves, their goals, and things they can't control, not the bullshit, that reap the greatest reward ever. Let's just be 1000% honest. Right now, your opinion does not matter. Neither does mine. No matter how bad we want something to change, us yelling and complaining will do nothing. If you actually do care about something outside of your control, still, focusing on yourself, getting some form of power and influence is the only thing you can do that's going to make an actual impact and change the situation. But you can't become someone who can do that by focusing on everything else. If it is such a huge issue that you can't stop thinking about it, cool, I get that. Then go do something to change it. Get into politics, move up, actually be in the room when decisions are being made. Sign the papers that's going to make an impact on someone's real life. If not, why talk about it? Why focus on it? It's a waste of time. The main thing I feel like people should focus on, or at least younger people around my age, like between, I don't know, like 17 to like 25, 30 or whatever. Because if you're like 40, 50 years old, it probably isn't applicable. Anyways, the main thing I feel like people should focus on around my age is becoming a more valuable human being. Build skills, gain leverage, create options, create something for yourself so you actually have the ability to make a change in your life and other people's lives. Because when you become more, you gain resources, you gain more power. And with resources and power, especially money, it unlocks levels of freedom. You get better education, you get better healthcare, you get better protection, both physical and legal. Just an overall better quality of life across the board. If there is a huge hurricane coming, you can just move. If the economy crashes and stocks get cut in half, you have a nest egg to weather the storm. You can be unemployed for a year and be cool. Hell, if there's a war, having money and leverage won't put you in a worse position. Even if you did want to like donate to a charity or you want to actually make a tangible impact in someone's life, if you have money, you can give it to people. I can't think of a situation in which having more money, power, and influence will put you in a worse position than not having it. Unless there's an entire fucking collapse of the world economy or there's a nuclear war, in which case I'll be dead, then fine. It won't matter. But still, whether or not something catastrophic does happen, your focus on it doesn't change the outcome. If you're constantly glued to it, stressing about every possibility, what does that really accomplish? You're not stopping it. You're not controlling it. You're just wasting your energy on something you can't influence. Because here's the thing. Let's say it doesn't happen. The thing you're looking at ends up being nothing. Then what? All the time you spend worrying, all that mental energy, all that missed opportunity to work on yourself, make money, get ahead, whatever, is wasted. And if it does happen, focusing on it didn't prepare you. It didn't help you avoid it. It didn't do anything. So either way, focusing on it does nothing. But if you don't focus on it, you focus on yourself instead, or becoming someone with resources, skills, whatever, then you win either way. If nothing bad happens, you've built a better life. If something bad does happen, you're in a far better position to handle it. It's not about ignoring the world. It's about understanding that obsessing over what you can't control does nothing to change anything. The best and only thing you can do is focus on what you can control, yourself and your actions. I just don't get what the alternative is. If you do want to get the most out of your existence, whatever that means to you, you can't just fall into it. Nobody does anything useful by accident. Look at almost everyone we look up to. It doesn't matter what domain. They were unbelievably focused on one thing for a long period of time. They didn't let small things that didn't matter to them throw them off track. And if they did, they got right back on track immediately. Like, could you imagine the people we look up to were distracted with TikTok if they had a brain rot and could doom scroll all day instead of focusing on their craft? Imagine those people scrolling all day on X and getting mad over things happening 1,000 miles away from them. Could you imagine how far behind we would be in the things we wouldn't have if they focused on everything outside of them instead of the work in front of them? They didn't put their time and focus into trying to change the rules of the world unless that was their specific goal. Throughout history, even in the worst circumstances, there have always been people who got ahead. During the Great Depression, wars, recessions, elections, pancakes, whatever economy, people still figured out how to survive, thrive, and create something meaningful. And I imagine they did it by focusing on what they could control, not wasting their time on things they couldn't. They probably knew just enough, the things they needed to, then took action to get ahead. I get it, social media, news, it spikes our emotions, it's designed to, but it's such a waste of time. Until there's something threatening your life right now, what else is there really to concern yourself with other than trying to get ahead in life? In my opinion, the only political or online things I think people should really care about are things that affect their immediate, tangible health and well-being, like violence or extreme weather. Of course, if that's happening, pay attention. And then anything that affects your money, like what's happening with the economy, but big things, not the daily little small things that only affect your money by a few $100s a year, but big things that can shake the entire economy. Like, if you know the markets are about to be cut in half, you know what to do to prepare for that. But just enough that you know the gist of what's happening so that you can take action. And then the only other thing I can think of are like things that are actually local to you. Like, what's important and what's not important. If it's something happening 1,000 miles away, you probably shouldn't care about it at all. This whole video is my opinion, of course, but it's helped me a lot. I think if you only focus on those things and ignore the rest, it might literally save you years of your life and so much unnecessary stress. I just cannot imagine somebody who is actively trying to get more out of their life, constantly distracting themselves with things that do not affect them. I can't imagine them caring about Mr. Beast drama, or caring about what happened with Joe Biden's son, or what Trump had for breakfast. They don't care about it because it doesn't concern where they're trying to go, who they're trying to become. They have other shit to worry about. And also, if you think I'm wrong, then you're right. Consume everything and forget it a week later, forever. That makes perfect sense. But before you go down that road, look in the mirror, then down at your hands, and realize that is the only thing you will ever have control over. And one day, you'll even lose control over that. And when you really understand that, you'll stop worrying about things outside of your control. You realize you don't have time to focus on things that aren't right in front of you, because what's right in front of you is all you will ever experience, and one day it will be gone forever. And for vast majority of people, if you actually focus on what's right in front of you, it's very, very rarely as bad or as catastrophic as the internet would have you believe. So the truth is, yes, there is something happening. Something is always happening, and at some point, something will happen to us. But always looking at what's coming takes away from the focus you could be putting into getting your shit together. So when something does actually happen, you're prepared to take action and actually do something. And if you're still here, listening this far into this video on a smartphone with AC and a full belly, you are fine. I promise you. If you're not going to do any of that, then here's another solution. This is a little darker, but hey, for those who made it this far, if you aren't going to stop consuming this stuff, then profit off of it. Talk about it, post it online, and get people to agree with you on whatever your stance is on things. Media companies have been around for a long time for a reason, because people love eating this shit up. And there's a lot of people who are making a living just giving their opinion on things online. And you can also get to the point when you are big enough online that you can have an actual say or power over certain serious situations. Kind of like I said before, Rules are rules. So learn the rules and play the game. The only other alternative is to consume and literally do nothing with it. Just keep throwing your time and attention down the drain, making the pockets of the people serving you the content rich. So you can keep consuming everything happening, just produce things based off of what you consume. Or stop consuming so you can focus on becoming someone greater so that when something does inevitably happen, you have the ability to change and protect yourself. That's all you can really do. Those are only real two good paths I can think of. Personally, I don't want to keep adding to it because I'm personally not interested in that world. But I mean, like maybe this video is actually feeding into it. I don't know. I just want to do cool things with my life and be at peace, as I'm sure you do as well. Just do anything, do something other than being those people who are chronically online looking at shit all day, getting overly emotional over things that are zero ties to them while doing nothing interesting in their own lives. That's it. So to wrap this up, I don't want to keep repeating myself. News, politics, media drama, brain rot, whatever is not going anywhere. You can ignore it for a year straight and come back to the same cesspool. 99% of it isn't useful and has nothing to do with you because when you put your phone down and go outside, nothing ever happens. And if there is actually something so important that you need to hear about it, I promise you, you will hear about it outside of a screen. At the end, the only thing you can ever do is focus on the things within your control. The world isn't going to end, and if it does, worrying about it wasn't going to change it anyway. But one day, your world will end. Guaranteed. So lock in and make money so you can remove yourself from the game, have freedom, and create a fulfilling life instead of worrying about stupid shit before you're dead forever. Basically, just get off your damn phone.